little bit, a couple different roles. I think from the first thing we really do have to thank is Dr. Farrell for putting this together. I think the drive that he's had, and we've had a long-term relationship since really '96 in the Olympic Games when I first met Dr. Farrell. We've actually always had conversations about things like this for the last 15 years here. And so very much congratulations, I think, to Dr. Farrell for putting this together. With the drive, I think, that Lindsay brings with her company. I've had a relationship with Lindsay for a long time too. And between the two of you, very much congratulations for getting this ball rolling in a formal way. Because I think the conversations that have happened for years. I come from a sport that's actually dealt with this for quite a long time. I was chairman of the FEI Safety Committee. I was on the first safety panel back in 1990 that produced the Hardington Report. And we talked about helmets at that point. And our sport, and my sport, from a personal point of view, from eventing, has actually dealt with this for a long time and has actually changed the rules. And we had the same conversations that in our sport that a lot of people are having now. Fashion and culture was a huge roadblock in show jumping. Not so much cross country because our world was already there, right? And our technology out of that came out of racing. And we used the racing technology. I think we actually then brought, because of our sport, we actually brought technology that racing is using now, with anywhere from vests to increase in the quality of the helmets. And so this conversation isn't on, we are already on the road. And we've been on the road. We've been on this road for really 15 or 20 years of leading to this point that we are now. And so the decision really that I think has to come up, and I really do believe that from the Federation's point of view, that we will support everything that we can do to make helmets of these type of qualities mandatory when you're sitting on a horse at a horse show. We will commit to that. So what we really need to do is that we're at a time, I believe that we're at a time in the road where the hard decision has to be made. And that hard decision has to take in things like standards, things like quality and say that fashion is not an argument. And culture is not an argument. The helmet that Ken was talking about before really wasn't designed for safety for falling off horse. Never was. It was designed, history-wise, for fox hunting. And it was designed for fox hunting because if you ever hunted in Europe a lot, you jump through a lot of woods and trees and branches and thorns. And that thing was to save from branches and thorns. It wasn't to save from falling off. That wasn't the technology it was actually invented for. And so it became a fashion culture part of all of our sport. We all rode in it, we all rode in it forever. But that's not applicable to today's world. And if we think about all the sports, if we think about hockey, if we think about football, and the changes that they're going through right now, we think about soccer, and the changes that they're going through right now. Skiing, bicycling, snowboarding, all of these sports, if we look at pictures from where they were 20 years ago and where they are now, are completely different in the way that they use their technology for safety. And we, as a sport, are still defending something that in the end is undefendable. It's undefendable. And so the time on that road is now, I think, to change. And the time on that road is now to say, this is the direction that we have to go to. We have the technology. I'll never forget when I was part of the safety that produced the Hardington Report back in 1990. One of the people that we had on that group was Jackie Stewart from Grand Prix Racing, right? Car, Formula One. It wasn't Formula One then, but it was Formula One. And he was fascinating to be around because he was actually chairman of the safety committee for Formula One after he retired. And two of the things that he did is, one, he closed the track. Absolutely closed the track because the track was too dangerous. And there were too many accidents on it. And this was a track that he said, I had won on this track 5, 6 big Grand Prix. And as soon as I was done, we had the opportunity, we closed it and made him change the whole track. because that the sport had gotten to the place where it was unacceptable for those type of accidents that were horrific in those days. And he was a big person about putting a cage around drivers. One of the technologies that he used was that they came in where their thing was tying a tire by a wire to the car. If you notice now in racing, you don't see tires flying up into stands anymore. And that was actually done by Ayrton Senna. If you ever remember, Ayrton Senna as a Formula One driver drove 200 miles an hour into a wall. And he was Grand Prix champion for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. Huge Brazilian. Drove 200 miles an hour into a wall. That didn't kill him, because the car did exactly what it was supposed to do. What killed him was the tire ricocheted off the wall and came back and hit him in the head. And he, Jackie Stewart, said, we had the technology. Why didn't we just think at that time that we just tie the tire to the car with a piece of wire? And that's all it is, a piece of wire. And it stops that type of injury anymore. And the point that he was getting at, if you have the technology, you have to use it. You have to. You have to use it if you have the technology available. You're not always going to think the road continues. The road will continue after we change, I think, the process. But in the end, we have to use the technology if we're available. And so we come down to a point that, again, I believe we're at a fork in the road that we have to take a line of saying that we need to go down there, and that fashion, again, is not an argument. That we have the technology to use. That technology will grow. That technology will get better. That thing will always go on. That will be an ever-increasing road. But the time is now. And I personally have kind of been here for a long time, but in my role as president, I haven't really pushed this. And now I think now is the time to push it and make it across the board. We've done it with juniors. We did it with juniors 15 years ago. That did not end their careers. We don't have less juniors now because of the funny helmets. We don't have less people bicycle riding because they have to wear helmets. We don't have less people. No, people will change to the situation that they go into. And I really do believe that, again, in this time, that we have to do this now. And again, I want to thank Craig and Lindsay for being able to put this forward, and thank you all for participating in this, because this will be a shift. It will be a shift in culture. It will be a shift in culture because it's not just the jumping sports that have already been there in some ways. But I think about the World Equestrian Games, which was a fantastic thing that we had earlier, well, last year now. And I watch walking down Nina Bonnie Avenue, and I watch the event riders, kind of doing their thing. They're all in their helmets as they've been for a long time. I don't think for eventing it's not going to be a big deal to change into wearing with a chin strap. Because already culturally they're already there, so they will get away from the helmet, the hat that's just walking around. And then I watch the dressage guys who are 50-50 warming up with helmets, and then they haven't been able to cross the line because they still think it will have an effect, so they put a top hat on going into it. And it will have a change of costume. When this happens, there will be a change. Another part of the culture will change, absolutely. That will be the step-by-step thing. And then I watch the jumpers. I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on the jumpers. Because I walked down Nina Bonnie Avenue, and the grooms are riding these big 17-hand horses galloping around before the jumpers got there in the first week, because the horses were there and a lot of jumpers weren't there yet. And then I get on to watch the jumpers later on, and none of them have a helmet. And I'm thinking about, we got 500,000 people here that saw this in 16 days. I'm thinking of all these kids that walked down that thing, and that's what they're looking at. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable, I think, at this point. And we need to change the rules, and we need to change the process. Everybody is already, in some ways, there. It's about taking the time and saying, now, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. And so whether this is going to happen in 3 years, whether it's going to happen in 5 years, whether it's going to happen in 7 years, what's the difference? It's going to happen. So let's do it now.
That's my point.